This is going to be another adventure of making sourdough. And I've just taken this out of the fridge and I'm going to feed it. I usually feed it with about 2 tablespoons to 4 tablespoons of wholemeal flour and a bit of water. I leave it sitting on the bench until it's doubled in size, and then we'll go to the next step. As you can see, this is quite stiff, and I'm going to put some water in it and top it up with some flour. I've added my water, it's about 2 tablespoons, and a scoop of flour. Okay, I've taken it out of the fridge and I've added some water, about 2 tablespoons of water, and I've added a tablespoon of flour. I'm just going to add some more flour. And another tablespoon of water. Mix it around. As you can see, it's quite stiff. Give it a good mix. And I scrape the sides down. I don't worry about these little bits around the edges. See, it's quite okay. That actually adds to the flavour. As you can see, the consistency is quite firm. And I place a lid on it and let it double in size. And the elastic band will show me when it's raised in height, and I just leave it sitting on the bench. And while I wait for my sourdough to rise, I'm going to go out and do a bit of gardening. I've got some plants to plant, and I bought some azaleas and some herbs. So while it's rising, we'll do that. So let's check out my new plantings for the day. Azaleas and some herbs over here. And all the things that I take off, I'll take out of here, I'll just give it to my girls because they love it. It's stuck in my wheelbarrow. Their favourite is spinach and of course kale, but there's no kale in there. You can see them eating the rainbow chard or spinach. All cleaned out. Now for the plantings. These are the 2 garden beds that my husband made for me a few months ago, and I was going to put more soil in them to raise them up, to make them raised garden beds. But what I've decided to do is use this area as kind of like a test, because the barriers at the side tend to provide wind chill barriers and frost barriers, and I found that things have been growing quite well over winter time, even during the frost period. So I'm going to clear it of weeds, and I'm going to plant in the soil that I've got there. So we'll see how it goes. I think my husband's happy about that because he doesn't have to cut a whole lot of soil in. And I am too, because I can now plant. I've got some of my veg planted. I've got my cucumbers here and my zucchinis down here, and I've planted basil in the corners here. Greek basil it's called, and sweet basil and Thai basil here. And what I'm going to do in the rest of this bed is I'm going to plant my tomatoes, so I've got to get them yet. So I think that's about all. I've got my capsicums in the greenhouse. I may plant a few outside to see how they compete. The ones that I've got in the greenhouse have actually been alive for, this will be their 4th year. They look a bit sad and sorry now, but they're 4 years old. They're still producing, but they'll come good. So that's a day in the garden, isn't it, Jack? A good day in the garden. Right, I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve outside today. Shall we go in and check how the starter's going? Okay, I've come to check the sourdough. It's 6 hours later and it's almost double in size, so I think it's strong enough to start making the bread. Ingredients in the description below. So now I get my bread maker and my weights. Right, we take 400 mils of water, just plain tap water. Two teaspoons of salt. And I use Himalayan salt. $30 grams of oil. Tablespoon of sugar, two tablespoons of powdered milk, and 600 grams of flour, and the most important ingredient, our sourdough starter. I usually give it a bit of a stir. You can see it's quite light and fluffy and airy, a bit more fluid than what it was in the beginning. I usually put it in first, but I forgot this time, so I'm adding it on top of the flour, but normally add it before you put the flour in. And it's 200 grams or 150 grams. I usually just leave a small amount in the bottom of the container. It's about a tablespoon that I've got left in there, and we'll prepare that to put that into the fridge shortly. Now I take it over to my bread machine. So select the dough section and then just press start. Now that will do its thing for about 1 hour and 30. This is the pan that I normally make it in. As you can see, it's quite long. Now this is what it looks like as it's beginning to mix. It looks okay, it's boiling up. I'll come back and check it in a few moments. Let's have a look. This is just a couple of minutes later, and you can see it's boiling up really well. Now it's going to rest for a while. Now while our dough is resting, we'll prepare the sourdough for the fridge. And the way I do that is I always use wholemeal flour. I don't measure things, I just add. I'm one of those cooks. So I add about 3 tablespoons and about a tablespoon of water. Again, I don't judge, I just add the water, and then I mix it up until it reaches a certain consistency. I like it to be a bit firm, but we're using the previous starter in there, and it looks a bit sloppy to me. You can see it's a bit sloppy, so I'm going to add a bit more flour, probably about another 2 tablespoons, and at this stage I'll start to use a knife to mix it up. And I'll scrape around what's on the top to get that all to go in down into the starter. Give it a good mix. And you can see it's kind of like balled up. See, there you go. It's balled up, it's quite solid. I'll scrape it down. And then I'll use my elastic band about where the level of the dough is. I'll put the lid on it, and then I'll take it over and put it in my fridge, and it'll be there probably for 2 days until I start to make my next sourdough. I actually have 2 jars of this, so I alternate. So in the end it's probably going to be in the fridge for 4 days, but there's enough food there for it to eat slowly while it's in the fridge, because it still does eat away and ferment while it's in the fridge. So that's how I keep my starter. While I was in the fridge putting the other one away, this is my other starter, and as you can see, it has actually risen probably about half an inch while it's been in the fridge for about 3 days. 4 days tomorrow. So it's still got plenty of food in there because it is still quite stiff. As you see, I can tip it up. It doesn't come out. That's the secret to keeping your dough alive, is making it quite firm. And as I said, I don't measure things. Once I know it's alive, it's important to keep it alive with flour and a bit of water. Firmer. I'm looking at it. I think it does, so just got to get the angle right there. I want it to boil just a little bit more, so I'm just going to put a little bit more flour on. You can see how it moves a little bit more freely in the mixer. Now, if it was too firm, you'd put more water in so that it moves around more freely. And you can usually tell by listening to your bread maker as well. So I hope you find that helpful, because making sourdough in a bread maker is a little bit different. See, the dough is moving very freely around the tip. That's what you want. Now the dough is resting. It's going to rest for nearly an hour. And while it's resting, the bread machine keeps it at 37 degrees, which is good. I'm just going to line my baking pan. So this is enough dough to make one big loaf. Right, the dough's ready. I'm just going to go and collect it out of the bread machine. Well, as you can see, it's risen a bit in the pan. What I do is I don't know if you can see my floured board. I better move it. Flour on my tray, and I'm just going to take it out of here, pull it out, and put flour on my hands so it doesn't stick. Now my flour has got a bit of grain in it. I like to make sometimes my bread with a bit of grain and plain flour. Take out the little paddle, and this is called stretching. So you just stretch it like that and roll it over on itself. I'll put a little bit of flour on it, stretch it some more. Pop it in the pan. You don't need to be real perfect with it. Just show you. There it is. And I'll leave that rise overnight. I usually cover it with a cloth, and it will rise right up to the top. Take it off in the oven for about an hour. 22 hours later, the bread is ready, almost risen to the top, and I'm going to put it in the oven now for an hour, and in my oven at 230, which is a gas oven. Let's just come out of the oven. Look at that. It is just superb. A perfect loaf. Oh, it looks so good. I'll cut it in the morning and show you what it looks like. Now it's the next morning and I'm about to cut my bread and show you what it looks like inside. So this is the big test. Texture is wonderful. I'll just give you a closer look. How good is that? And I usually have one slice in the morning with my favourite jam, which is cherry. The texture is just superb. It's got a firm crust, and when it's toasted it's very crunchy, and this actually makes a great size to make a sandwich out of, so that's why I like to make it in this big tin. The video today was supposed to show you how to make it in my bread maker, cook it in my bread maker, but my bread maker doesn't have just a baking alone setting, so I have to cook it in the oven, and the secret to this sourdough recipe that I'm sharing with you is to allow it to ferment for a long period of time. It has been rising for 22 hours before baking in the oven. Now I've toasted a piece of my bread, and I just want to show you just how crunchy the crust is. I really love this part. It's kind of like, it's delicious. The crust is rather crunchy, but the inside of the bread is kind of like a bit like a crumpet. It's so yummy. So I hope you enjoyed the video and enjoy your baking with sourdough. And remember, the secret to sourdough, making a tasty loaf, is to allow the starter to really mature, and also to allow the dough, as the bread is rising, to take some time, because that's how the flavour is developed. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to doing some more cooking adventures with you in the future.